Good morning. You're listening to Central Wisconsin's 24-hour information station, AM 1320 WFHR. It's time now for the Morning Magazine, brought to you by Comfort Air Heating, Cooling.
Welcome, everyone, to Morning Magazine for this December 22nd, 2021. You have your host, James J. Malouf, here at 10:30. We're going to speak with our friends from the ODC. Tanya and Chris are going to join us. Looking forward to hanging out with them in just a little bit. Right now, in studio with us, Lance Pliml, Wood County Board Chairman. Good morning, Lance.
Morning, James. Thanks for having me on locally grown radio. I was listening all morning.
Appreciate that. We also want to thank Kevin, our friends at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media, being here. Good morning to them. And happy belated birthday, I believe, right? Or no, it's different. No. Well, when it comes
it's somebody's birthday somewhere.
At some point between now and next year at this time, you will have a birthday. So I'm just getting ahead of it. We appreciate Lance being in with us. Thanks so much for being here. First up, how are you and yours doing? How's everybody going? Are you ready for Christmas?
No.
Yeah. Great answer.
No, I'm doing great. I think, family, friends, and those people around me are doing well. I'm never ready for Christmas. I'm one of those people who has a wife who really does everything, makes the house a home. My responsibility is very limited, and yet I still don't have that accomplished. So, but that's typical. It's nothing out of the ordinary. I heard yesterday I still got 3 shopping days left. So
yes,
I'm actually ahead of schedule probably by a couple of days. And, we touched on this before we came in, though. This is one of those times of year when you ask that. I think you tend to personally. I mean, you look back, you kind of reflect on what happened last year. You take stock of where you are, and I know I wake up on some days and I go, what did I do today or what did I do this year that not only makes life better for my family, but the community? Mm-hmm. And that's the one thing that, I constantly ask of those residents of our areas. What have you done, whether it be for your own family, for your personal improvement, or within your community to make it better? And, I start naming names and I'm going to leave people out, but, I don't care if that's, volunteering at a hospital, a community table, the Hannah Center, shelters, involvement with, Kiwanis, elks, lions. I could just go on and on. But those are the kind of efforts that really make a difference in a community and really make it a great place to live. And we really truly do have a great place to live. Oftentimes I hear, there's not enough to do or this isn't working well. But when I look at issues like, public safety, if I look at homelessness, I mean, we have some homelessness, but it's not rampant.
Yeah.
We obviously have issues that we deal with drug addiction through our drug courts, and some of the other ways we try to use different programs to deal with this. But we also don't have you don't see people, addicts out in the street overdosing. I mean, it's a great place to live, but it is a great place because the people in the community pitch in, they see the problem, they address it. Or they try to address it. And so I heard it from somebody else. I'm paraphrasing. I'm stealing from what they said. But, in a time of year, we're always looking at what do I give somebody? Mm-hmm. They said to me, why don't you give it yourself? Take that time, get out in the community, do something that not only improves your life and will make you feel better at the end of the day. I mean, I always think, when my days are done, and life is over, how will you be remembered, as a giver or a taker? Yeah. So my charge to everybody out there listening is, try to be a giver, especially this time of year.
Yeah. Nobody lives in a utopia. Every community has issues or problems, but do the problems run the area or does the area run the problems? Do they handle them? Do they see a situation and bark at it or do they put actions to it? I think that this community, I think Wood County in general, and I'll even stretch to Portage and what I know of Marathon and those areas are pretty good about reacting and playing some offense on some issues. It's some of the things you touched on there. So you don't see it running rampant. So it is an issue and it needs attention, but it doesn't necessarily keep us up at night or that sort of thing. I come from an area that did have that. And so the perspective of that is not lost on me. It's the reason my family migrated up here was because of getting away from some of those kind of things. So I think it's a nice point to make, and it's never a bad opportunity or never a bad time to have some appreciation, to have some perspective. I think the end of the year kind of does that for us. We you go on any TV show and they're going to have their best of list or something like that. So we all do it. It's good on a personal level. I like the kind of sort of mini challenge to give ourselves of hey, what did I do this year? Or what did I do today to make my community, to make my life, to make life in general better? I like that challenge.
You know, and that's challenging government, and especially county government, because we're close to home. We deal with all those issues. Whether it be and there's some things that have been at the forefront this year. Obviously, health issues. With COVID, and we're not through this. I am one who personally believes we're through the worst of this. I mean, we're seeing an increase in number of infections with the Omicron variant. We're seeing a lot of that in school-age kids. Frankly, though, we're not seeing a lot of severe illness. We're seeing, mildly symptomatic, asymptomatic, positive tests, but we're not seeing a lot of problems there. That being said, we still encourage you to, be safe. If you're sick, stay home.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to gather with family and somebody isn't feeling well, I know the day is important, but maybe you schedule the weekend before or after.
Mm-hmm.
You try to work within those parameters because our health, all of our health systems are stressed this time of year for reasons other than COVID.
Right.
It's a time of year where mental health issues tend to come to the forefront. There's more heart attacks. There's more strokes.
Yep.
There's a lot of anxiety around it. It's supposed to be a time of, cheer and joy and celebration. But the fact of the matter is, those are statistics that are hard.
Yeah,
and
not everybody has that.
So we deal with those. And then you deal with all of the human service issues we deal with, the people who haven't been as fortunate and all of their needs. So we tend to govern in a reactionary fashion. But when I say that, that's because, as you mentioned, things come to the forefront. People mention a problem. We try to define the problem, we look at it, and then we decide, how can we address this? Do we have the people, the manpower? Do we have the dollar resources? I don't care what anybody says. I always hear it's all about the money. It is. At the end of the day, if I don't have the ability to gather resources, to purchase, to use, to pay people, it's pretty tough to address. So, it's how do we allocate?
Yeah.
What's more important? And those are ideas we get from the public. People like you, James, we have these conversations. You may say something, you don't even realize it, that I leave, take to heart and leave from here and go, yeah, that's something we got to look at. And I hear that every day when we're on the street.
That's part of the reason why we appreciate having a board made up of community members. We have a mayor, we have representatives, our sheriff's department, our police department, all community members, so that we're that in tune. You don't necessarily, it's good to have a city hall meeting or something like that, but you don't have to have that to understand what's happening in the community when you have the community in these positions. It works a lot easier, a lot smoother that way. It also speaks to why there's why I think there's a kind of a barrier between us and the government, as far as the federal government and everything, because it's not as locally touched.
The closer it is to home, the better it is. If you personally know your representative, it helps. It helps when myself or our county board or the mayor knows our state representatives. It helps if we know our federal representatives. I have those opportunities both through our county and the State County Association. I'm going to be out in D.C. again in, 2 or 3 weeks, directly talking to those people. And the one thing you can't do is walk in somebody's door and always have an ask. You have to develop a relationship first. And when those relationships develop, they know that if you're there's probably really an issue, and they tend to listen. Now, that doesn't always mean that they have the resource, but it means that hopefully they're looking for the resource. And I'll tell you this, we're extremely lucky in this area. As I travel around the country, I hear different county board chairs or county executives say, we don't talk to our sheriff, or the board doesn't talk to the executive, or I've had people tell me, I haven't talked to my state representative in years. Well, I can tell you, we have those conversations often. It may not be daily, but when issues come up, it's often, whether it be representative, if it's Scott Krug, if it's Senator Teston, if it's the mayor, Shane Blazer, or up in Marshall, we don't have a mayor currently, although there's a number of people running up there on that end of the county right now. I think we have 4 candidates right now who have declared.
What's going on over there.
It's interesting, but we have those conversations. They've been ongoing. They're open because although there are municipal borders and local units of government, those problems don't end at the line.
Yeah.
What's happening in Ward 1 in the city doesn't end where meets up with Ward 2, for instance.
Right.
So there are more global issues in that respect that we have to look at together.
When we kind of take a look back at the past year, what are some things that come to mind for you when it comes to being proud of the past year and some of the work the community has done or that have happened in the community that stand out to you?
Well, again, it's been at the forefront. The first is the health efforts. And, our health department's been phenomenal through this. I met the other day, I was talking to some of the superintendents. They couldn't be more complimentary of the relationships that then have been developed, kind of walking that tightrope between keeping a community safe, keeping businesses open, keeping kids in school. We have 4 districts right now that are in a program where, we try to test and keep kids in school. We're working around that. So the health issue has been dominant. It's been at the forefront. It's what we've looked at everywhere. We constantly look at, the mental health crisis in our areas and how we deal with that. And programs tend to evolve, and we tend to get better at it. I mentioned it earlier. We had an opioid crisis. We still do. But the counties association, along with a bunch of other states and counties, joined in a lawsuit, and we have a lot of money coming in lawsuit in settlement dollars to our area to deal with those problems specifically. But that's been a big problem. It's a problem for law enforcement, for our courts. It creates some capacity issues with our drug courts and our other diversion programs. That's been an issue. Public safety. I was coming in here. I was flipping back and forth. Every time you went to commercial, I'd flip to national news. But, you look at what's going on in some of the cities. And you mentioned earlier, you left an area. Your family left an area. When you look at what's going on in whether it be, New York, Chicago, Philadelphia, Baltimore, and you look at those public safety issues and people are afraid, in the middle of the day, sometimes to walk into areas that were once considered, just the bastion of public safety and business, the Magnificent Mile in Chicago, downtown Manhattan, Times Square, they're having problems. And, we've looked at that in our county. We're going to have an additional judge here to move people through that criminal justice system more quickly. We're developing that courtroom. We're in the process of building a new jail. I said this in Marshfield the other day. I'll say it again. We're lucky here that we have law enforcement agencies that said, you're not going to come here and break the law and walk away. And we have a district attorney who's willing to prosecute. And we have judges who are willing to, not that everybody should be incarcerated. I want to make that real clear. Yeah. There are other programs. We have electronic monitoring. We have diversion programs. But there are some people you can't play catch and release with. Right. They need to be in jail. And part of being in jail is then the re-education and the ability to, move them back into society. Yeah. So, with this new project, not only do we have some additional space and we won't be sending 100 people out of county, but we have the ability to educate them while they're in there and then hopefully make them productive members of society at some point. Again, we talked about givers rather than takers.
Yes.
It's expensive to incarcerate somebody, yet we have to balance that with public safety.
All great topic things you bring
Those are,
up
yeah,
there.
that's a pretty good start.
Just some of it. That's a great start.
Highways. We've spent, $2.5 million updating and improving our highways in the area, way ahead of the state. In those efforts.
I'm so glad that you started off bringing up our public health officials and the amazing job that they have done over the last 20 some months and everything, and how much we appreciate them and any opportunity to bring them up. And a big good morning to our friends at the Wood County Health Department and so many other people out there. I want to piggyback off of that a little bit and thank also all of our public works workers, our construction workers, our road workers, our people picking up garbage and recycling, all of those facets, those gray areas that I don't know if anybody else noticed, but we're going through a pandemic, and our garbage was still picked up. Our recycling was still picked up. And that may not seem like the biggest deal to some, but it'd be a big deal if it wasn't.
Business continued. And that was
I think that there's some pride to take in that. And you really settled on one that I really wanted to touch on, that we've all heard for years and years, well over a decade, I believe, of a new jail and the idea of that. And every year it seemed like we were inching closer to it, but just that it was out of reach still. This was the year that actually went into process. We got the ball rolling on that. So that seems like a pretty big accomplishment for the community as well.
It was huge, James. And we took a really deep dive into this. Obviously, when you have a capital investment of that size, there's an impact. What the deciding factor for me was when we looked at the maintenance, the upkeep, and the improvements that had to be made to our existing facility based on requirements from, whether it be Department of Corrections, Department of Justice, wherever that comes from. Those costs, along with operation over the next 25 to 30 years, were going to be in the neighborhood of $160 million if we didn't do anything. As much say, well, why do jails have to be great places to house people? Well, it's more like they have to be operational. You have to have communication. Those doors that close, they have to open in an emergency. And as you get a jail that's, 50, 60 years old, parts are no longer available. Those things don't work. So those lines cross. We had a $160 million projection if we did nothing. We have $130 million spend if we build a jail over that period of time. So long run, operationally, a total cost, rolling in the capital improvement, we have a $30 million savings. That is substantial. Now there's a hit on the front end a little bit here, and those tax rates and those costs will go down, as we looked at the borrowing and how this occurs. But it just had to be done. I mean, we're shipping basically 100 people out of county all the time, and there's transportation costs involved with that, as long as the inconvenience to the courts. So
all of those are incredible. Those are very important notes in why this should happen, as well as the safety of those inmates and our officers
and the
running.
officers.
That's what I was saying, and the officers of the facility. All the money, all that stuff is important and noteworthy, and taxpayers care about that stuff and everything. I think the headline in this story is the safety of people in the jail, whether we're talking about the officers or the inmates. Whether you care about that or not, you need to, because those officers, those people that are working in those jails, are doing a job that not many people are willing to do, even with a badge, aren't willing to do, and yet they're over there doing that. And then those inmates are not just your neighbors. Oftentimes they are relatives. They are people that you care about. And if you want society to get away from the whole, why do we have so many people incarcerated? Why do we have so much of this? You go back to a conversation that Sheriff Becker and I had over 2 years ago, I believe, and we're having it every time it seems like he joins us, about mental health and stopping the revolving door. You want to do those things, it's going to take some money. It's going to take some patience. That's the cost of this. If you don't do something, to Lance's point, it's going to cost even more. So you're actually saving yourself in the long run doing this. But yes, there's also the important factor that I think that unfortunately gets lost in the shuffle of human life. Treating human beings like human beings, and the idea of that, and not getting that lost in the shuffle of all this. All the numbers are important. It cannot be lost in the shuffle of the safety, and the overall reason for this is to keep our officers and these inmates safer.
And you touched on another part of this earlier too. People don't understand. The private sector does a great job in providing services, probably more effectively and efficiently than government, because all the approval processes we need to go through and the way money gets allocated. At the end of the day, though, there's some things that are just provided by the public sector. And you're right. Whether it be, people don't realize there's a problem until your garbage doesn't get picked up. You don't realize there's a problem until you turn the faucet on and no water comes out, or or the waste isn't disposed of. The other day when we had a power outage, you don't really think about that until all the lights go out and you don't have TV and you don't have radio and your alarm clock's not going off in the morning unless you have something battery operated, or you forgot to charge your cell phone, earlier in the day, and all of a sudden you're out of communication. Those are all things that the public sector does. And those employees, whether it be our, in our highway departments, our parks departments, the health department, human services. I mean, every single department in the county, we didn't shut down any of them.
No.
Every single one. Dispatch. When you called 911, somebody answered the phone. And so, I am not a mandate person. I just don't like them. But at the end of the day, there's times where, for instance, we have to have a dispatch center open. When you call 911, you want to hope somebody answers the phone. And so on some of those, we have to err on the side of safety, or say we have to have enough dispatchers to be able to answer those phone calls. And then one of the other issues we talked about earlier, what am I kind of proud of? Well, we got a large solar project going in down in Saratoga, on the positive end. There was a lot of local concern about, the CAFO that was proposed down there. Good or bad, there was concern. Now we have a very large solar project going in that's going to come online, next year likely. If you've been down there, I think there's 76,000 posts in the ground. Solar panels will be, eventually added to those. You're going to generate enough power for roughly 30 to 40,000 homes from that, and they're looking at doubling the size of that project right now. That's a trend right now. Right now, solar is not probably as cost effective as some of the others, but as they develop more, it will be. And the power companies have decided that's the direction they're going. Well, we're at the forefront of that.
Yeah, we're getting ahead of the curve.
We're ahead of the curve. So that's good. And then there's the little issues we deal with. Kevin, as he walked in today, said, we did a lot of, end of the year, we do a lot of budget amendments. And all that means is we're moving money from, we were going to fix road A, well, we're going to fix road B. We allocate where it's going to go and we move it over. It doesn't change the amount of money. It's just, we're rearranging deck chairs. But, there are some issues that the public weighs in on. One of the things they're looking at locally in Wood County is taking the fences down, for instance, at Sand Hill,
Mm.
which has been a wildlife area, controlled area for study and recreation over the years. DATCAP and the DNR want to remove those right now.
Mm.
I'd be lying if I said I know, the benefits of that,
Mm-hmm.
or what might be detrimental about that. I really don't know. But the public's starting to weigh in on that. When the DNR, DATCAP says they're going to do something, we say, hey, wait a minute.
Mm-hmm.
Has anybody talked to anybody locally?
Yeah.
And those conversations have started. I know Representative Krug, Senator Teston have looked at this. Our board passed a resolution the other day that said, hey, stop. We need a lot more information before you start tearing down fences that have been there for 50 plus years to study this. So those are the little kind of things that tend to be on the side as opposed to the big dollar issues, but they affect you every day.
We only got a couple minutes left, of course, but just off the top of your head, is there things that you're looking forward to in 2022? Certainly we've touched on the jail that will be more developed by then, and we'll have, shovels in the ground and that kind of thing. And I think it was spring or summer, somewhere around there. So that's one thing to be looking forward to. Certainly the solar project will be more up and running or closer to it. There's a couple of interesting and fun big projects in this area.
Yeah, the next big thing on the horizon is, as a county, we have about 14.1 million, 2 million of ARPA money.
Mm.
So, as you look at recovery.
So we're going to Vegas. We're all going to Vegas, everybody, right?
We're on red and see what happens. So at the end of the day, though, that's a large amount of money coming in a single time. We also have infrastructure money that's going to be coming in the form of highway, bridges, stuff like that. And we just had a large opioid settlement. That money's coming in over 18 years, but it's to the tune of several $1 million. So we have, to some extent, likely a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity with a lot of money. And the one thing we want to do is spend it wisely. Now, part of that money, there were some initial needs on things we have kicked down the road forever that needed to be done. And they're, for instance, HVAC systems at our Edgewater facilities or up at Norwood, the Northwood County Annex. There are some of those things that have to happen that we've just put Band-Aids on forever. That being said, 95 to 99% of that money is still going to be left. And we are, I've said we're going to meet with local leaders and try to leverage this, to work with them with their money. And how do we benefit the entire area? They keep changing the rules on us. And the one note we keep getting from Washington is just take your time and wait a minute. Wait till we get everything refined. We have to file reports that say, what have you done so far? And they all say nothing. Because you keep telling us in Washington, don't do anything yet till we refine the program. But we're going to be looking at that. We'll be looking at that with our partners. But, so figure somewhere in the neighborhood of, $13 million left within the county, $22 million left within the county as a whole, not just the county budget, but all those municipalities. Where can we leverage that? And how can we make a difference generationally? Yeah. And my guess is a large amount of that's going to go into economic development efforts where we're going to see long-term return.
It's going to be really fascinating to find out where that goes, how it develops, the stories that are going to come from this. And I think I cannot agree with you more. I think this is a once in a lifetime kind of moment where we're able to really make a real impact and do some good with this. It'll be interesting to see where that goes in the new year. And it'll be real fun to talk to you then. Looking forward to it already. Always appreciate the time and everything you do for our community, Lance. Keep up the great work and wish a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year to you and yours.
Yeah, Merry Christmas to everybody out there. And like I said, I just relayed the thoughts of the board. So appreciate that and the opportunity to come in and speak with you.
Kev, you and your family and all of our friends over at Wisconsin Rapids Community Media wish you a very Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And thank you for everything you do for our community. We'll be back with more Morning Magazine in just a few moments on AM 1320 WFHR 97.5 FM.